Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Archana Solanki. Here are the headlines we're tracking this evening. Positive start to the week for the markets. Metals and autos lead from the front even as Nifty and the Sensex gain over 0.5%. Mid-cap see broad-based gains. Government sources say India buying Russian oil is critical to maintaining price stability even as it emerges as an irritant in Washington. New Delhi trade talks add that Russian crude oil has not been sanctioned. A senior Trump aide says it's not acceptable for India to continue financing Russia's war in Ukraine by purchasing oil from them. Oil prices slip after OPEC countries and their allies agree to a large production hike in September. The organization cites a healthy economy, low stockpile as key reasons behind the production hike. RBI's three-day monetary policy committee gets underway. The street keeps an eye on whether Trump's India tariffs and a lower inflation forecast would lead to the MPC to cut the benchmark rate. CNBC TV 18 Citizen Monetary Policy Committee votes 3-2 in favor of a pause. Marico meat street in the first quarter outperforms its peers. Its 9% volume growth is the highest among FMCG giants who have reported their numbers so far. China's largest electric vehicle maker, BYD, posts its first monthly sales decline of the year as price war intensifies in the sector. Sales drop over 10% compared to June. Rivals Xiaomi and Xpeng see strong sales growth. Chinese regulators recently announced plans to help curb price wars in the EV space. Supreme Court stays defamation proceedings against Congress MP Rahul Gandhi for social media posts on the back of the 2020 Galwan Valley clashes, but criticizes his claim that 2,000 square kilometers of Indian territory were occupied by the Chinese. The Apex Court observes that a true Indian would not make such a statement in times of conflict. One of India's tallest tribal leaders and a three-time Chief Minister of Jharkhand, ShibuSoren, dies at 81. One of the key forces behind the creation of Jharkhand, Soren had been admitted at a prominent Delhi hospital for over a month. Prime Minister Modi, senior ministers and politicians across the spectrum condoled his death. Policy Bazaar's Yashish Dahiya says he wants to change the health insurance incentive structure with their new platform PB Health. Tells CNBC TV 18 that they are advising customers to move to a narrow network of hospitals to avoid rising higher health insurance premiums and higher incidences of claims rejections. All right, on to the day's market action. Sensex and Nifty started the week on a healthy note, largely led by metals and autos. Financials kept the gains in check while mid-caps witnessed broad-based selling gains. Surbhi Upadhyay joins us now with the day's market action. Surbhi.
Well, it was a good day for the bulls after a long time. A trending update, not a very massive gain on the Nifty, but I'll tell you why it was a good day. And there were three reasons why we finally managed to get this pullback and the bulls at least managed to resurface today. Reason number one, the weak jobs report in the US has now led global markets to feel that the Fed will finally move. So far it hasn't, despite all the push and all the overtures coming in from the US president. So that's the first reason. The second reason is that earnings season perhaps is not turning out to be as bad as feared. I mean, look at some brokerage commentary that's coming in. Goldman Sachs is saying that out of all the MSCI India earnings that have come out, 39% are above estimates, 44% are below estimates, but the misses are not much, just 1-2%. So it's not that bad. Ditto by Motilal Oswal. They're also saying that they've cut their FY26 EPS estimates by only 1% so far. So the first quarter is not as bad as feared. And number three, the market simply needed a reason. It got that. It bounced from oversold levels. So now let's talk about today's performance. For the Nifty, we've seen gains pretty much across the board. A very green screen. Hero Moto 5% higher. Tata Steel doing very well today, 4% up. Hindalco higher. BEL, Adani Ports, and even some of the tech stocks that have been beaten down, like Tech Mahindra, TCS, they managed to rebound today. The only underwhelming side of the market really was large cap banking. HDFC Bank, ICICI Bank. These stocks had some red on the screen. Mid-caps had a very strong day. The mid-cap index has done much better than Nifty. The gain is almost 1.5% for the mid-cap index. Let's talk about some big movers here. Trill, transformers and rectifiers, surging 7% on a very solid set of numbers for the first quarter. Again, delivery, a very positive reaction to the numbers. MCX, There were other movers, Dilip Bilkon, which got a major order, Mannapuram, so lots and lots of mid-caps that were buzzing around. There were some losers, of course, the notable ones being ABB, very weak performance in the first quarter. It took down Thermax with it as well. Thermax was down 6% today, and Narayana Health also reacting to numbers and on the downside. Now, of course, the week is a very busy one. Going forward, the market will react to the RBI policy, more earnings that are in focus, and any developments on tariffs, specifically with respect to any possible breakthrough when it comes to India and US in those trade negotiations.
Right, thank you, Surabhi, for that. The top story this evening. The Trump administration has ramped up its criticism of India's purchase of Russian oil in what is Washington's strongest criticism so far. The White House's Deputy Chief of Staff, Stephen Miller, accused India of effectively financing Russia's war in Ukraine. The senior Trump aide said that US President felt that New Delhi's actions were unacceptable. However, India's crude oil imports from the US are set to rise by over 150% in FY26. Sources tell CNBC TV18 that imports in the first quarter of the fiscal already rose by 114%, with share of US crude in India's import basket rising from 3 to 8% in July alone. Furthermore, government sources maintain that India's purchase of Russian oil is critical to maintaining price stability. Sapna Das is here with more on the government stance on the matter. Sapna.
Well, it's pretty much clear. The view back here in India is the fact that if we halt our imports from Russia, and which are quite sizable in quantity, this could really harden the international global, or rather international crude oil prices. If you look back in 2022, March 2022, just after Ukraine war had broken out, there was a fear of a lot of the Russian oil going off the market. And at that point in time, also, you had seen crude spiking to around $137. But coming back to the present scenario, in fact, back of the envelope estimates within certain sections of the government indicate that crude could spike to as much as $200 a barrel if if a large chunk of the Russian oil goes off the market, or if India halts those imports from Russia. Also, we need to be mindful of the fact that in all these years, India has actually followed all the possible international protocols in terms of sourcing crude oil from Russia. Now, let's just look at the numbers as to how important we are as a buyer of the Russian crude and what kind of numbers Russia talks about. So basically, 4.5 million barrels per day is the kind of exports that Russia does, out of which almost around 1.8 to 2 million barrels per day is what India buys from them. Also, we need to keep in mind that almost 10% of the global demand, that is around 9.5 million barrels per day, is what Russia produces. It is the second biggest producer in the world. So, to speak about Russian oil going off the market, or India halting its imports from that country, would basically really cause a shortage of oil supply in the global markets very clearly. So this is the take here, and I think in the coming days we'll know more. But I think the stance back in India is very clear that the imports are not stopping, and Russia will continue to be an important oil sourcing partner for India.
Right, thank you, Sapna, for that. Moving on, crude oil prices declined after OPEC Plus agreed to a big production hike in September. This move comes as concerns mount over potential supply disruptions linked to Russia. Now, US President Donald Trump has threatened secondary tariffs of up to 100% on nations buying Russian oil. Remember, India is the world's third largest importer of crude oil. Manisha Gupta joins us now to give us an outlook on crude oil prices and also how US sanctions may impact India. Manisha.
So when you look at the Indian crude imports overall as a picture, prior to Russia's invasion in Ukraine, the number was quite small. 85% of India's imports at that time were from GSS countries, like the Gulf countries, that is. And when you look at the imports from Russia, they were a minute 0.2 to 0.5% at around $5 billion worth. But post-Russia and Ukraine conflict, and because Russian crude oil was available at a much discounted rate, we did see India and China start to buy a lot of it. So from 0.2 to 0.5%, what we did see in the first half of 2025, those imports surged to a huge 35 to 40% of overall Indian imports as well. That is where they begin. Also, when you look at the Kepler data more closely in sense of numbers, then For the month of June, we saw Russian imports of crude into India at 2.1 million barrels per day. By the time it's July, we've seen a decline to 1.8 million barrels per day. But 35% for the first half still stands in sense of imports from Russia there. Now, the markets are looking at those important deadlines where we have US pressuring India to cut its Russian oil imports. US also is pushing for a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. There's a deadline by the end of this week. If that does not happen, then there is 100% secondary sanctions that we are looking at for buyers as well. And there could be more action and reaction too. So with this, the markets will focus on Friday. That is when the US president says a deadline there lies in. Now, there are a couple of scenarios to this. If US does go ahead with the restrictions on Russia, the markets tell us, and many of these banks and brokerages also have come out with reports suggesting that this could take the crude oil prices in a 3-digit territory above $100 a barrel. Because Russia does produce, it's the second or the third largest producer in the global markets there. And with the kind of production Russia does, OPEC members will not be able to meet that. There's not enough global spare capacity. And you will see that knee-jerk reaction come in for the crude oil prices.
Right, thank you, Manisha, for that. Shifting tracks now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has called for citizens to support locally made products. Speaking at a public rally in Varanasi over the weekend, the Prime Minister added that countries globally are focusing on their self-interests as the world economy is facing instability. Now, his remarks came days after US President Donald Trump announced a 25% tariff on India and vowed to impose additional penalty for buying Russian oil.
आज दुनिया की अर्थव्यवस्था कई आशंकाओं से गुजर रही है। अस्थिरता का माहौल है। मेरे देशवासियों, अब हम कुछ भी खरीदें तो एक ही तराजू होना चाहिए। हम उन चीजों को खरीदेंगे जिसे बनाने में किसी न किसी भारतीय का पसीना बहा है।
On to earnings now. Consumer goods brand Marico's first quarter numbers were in line with street expectations. Net profit rose over 8%, while revenue surged more than 23% on an annual basis. Mangalam Malu joins us now with more. Mangalam, take us through the numbers.
9% is the highest that we've seen among the large companies that have reported when it comes to Marico's volumes. But importantly, remember, the street was prepared for that, and which is why, the stock is holding on, and it was at close to 52-week high before numbers. The street had already sussed out these numbers from the first quarter update that the company has given. So largely in line. If you look at it, the revenues 3259 crores. The street was working with a number of 3270 crores. Volume growth at 9%. The street was working with a range of 8 to 9%. EBITDA at 655 crores. The poll was closer to 665 crores. No problems out there as well. And net profit around 500 crores as well. Largely in line. The only thing we need to watch out for going forward are the margins. Why do I say that? Because gross margins declined by 530 basis points. There's been a sharp inflation in their key copra prices, 18% quarter on quarter, over 100% year on year, and that will remain the key monitorable going ahead. Parachute rigids declined volumes by about 1%, and this after a 31% revenue growth, telling you how raw material prices have had an impact on their main business. Value-added hair oils grew well. That was a positive. Saffola also saw a mid-single-digit growth. So what is it that led the volume growth this time around? It was foods and their new businesses. The company has been diversifying in the past itself. What they've said is that the impact of unprecedented margin headwinds will peak out in the first half, and the second half we will see margin improvement. They will sustain positive volume and revenue growth momentum through the year. So demand from a top-line standpoint, no problems. Margins remain the key monitorable.
Right, thank you, Mangalam. EV two-wheeler maker Ather Energy's first quarter loss contracted 3% compared to last year, aided by a rise in other income. Revenues surged 79% year-on-year as retail volumes rose. Gross margin largely flat, both sequentially and on an annualized basis. The company's share surged 13% to hit a fresh 52-week high after reporting its earnings for the quarter. Now, shares of auto major BYD declined in trade after the company's July sales fell nearly 10% month-on-month. The Chinese EV giant delivered over 3.5 lakh vehicles globally during the month, marking gains of less than 1% on an annual basis. This is the company's first monthly decline in 6 months, causing investors to worry. Adani Group has denied reports suggesting a possible tie-up with Chinese companies BYD and Beijing Wilion New Energy Technology. The company clarified that reports suggesting a partnership with these Chinese companies are inaccurate and misleading. It further said that the company is not exploring any collaboration with BYD for battery manufacturing in India. RBI's Monetary Policy Committee has begun its three-day meet. The street will be watching if Trump's tariffs and a lower inflation forecast would goad the MPC to cut the benchmark rate. 3 of CNBC TV 18's 5-member Citizen Monetary Policy Committee voted in favour of the central bank keeping rates steady. The committee also expects one more rate cut in 2025.
The first question that you have to vote on, what will the MPC do to the repo rate on August 6th? Can I start with Samiran?
We are expecting a 25 basis point repo rate cut in the August meeting.
Okay, cut. Soumya?
We are expecting a 25 basis point cut.
Oh, that's 2 cuts. Sonal?
We think the MPC will hold rates this time, but a dovish hold.
Okay. Hold or a pause. Sajid, pause or cut?
It will be a pause.
Okay. Dr. Sen, your team is divided 2-2. Which way do you tilt?
Strategically for the RBI, a pause.
Pause. Okay. So no action is what our committee is saying. Finally, if you include an action on August 6th, how many rate cuts do you see in 2025? Samiran?
Only 25 basis point.
Okay. 1 cut only, that which you're expecting on August 6th. Soumya?
We are also looking at one more cut, 25 only.
Sonal?
50 basis point more.
Okay. Again, there is a dissent here. Sajid?
I would say either 0 or 25 basis points.
No, I'll have to go with 25. No, I can't take either or. I'll take 25. Dr. Sen?
On this, again, I will go with Sonal.
Okay.
Delay and when you do it, have a 50 basis points cut.
The government's tax card upgrade project known as PAN 2.0 has been awarded to LTI Mindtree. Sources tell CNBC TV 18 that the project is expected to go live in 18 months. PAN 2.0 will introduce a single unified portal, paperless processing and free EPAN services. Over 3,000 Boeing defense workers went on strike in Missouri and Illinois. The workers are trying to seek a new contract. This move comes after union members at operations rejected the company's latest offer over pay, work schedules and pensions. The union last went on strike nearly 30 years ago, where they stopped working for 99 days. Now, Vietnamese EV maker VinFast has opened its first manufacturing plant in Tamil Nadu. The company's first overseas plant is expected to generate over 3,500 jobs in the next 5 years. It is part of a 16,000 crore rupee investment pact inked between VinFast and the Tamil Nadu government. The plant will initially have a production capacity of 50,000 vehicles per year. The company will focus on making premium electric SUV models at the plant. On to a CNBC TV 18 exclusive. PB Fintech's founder Yashish Dahiya has said that he wants to change the health insurance incentive structure with their new platform, PB Health. Speaking with CNBC TV 18, he said that they are advising customers to move to a narrow network of hospitals to avoid rising higher health insurance premiums and higher incidences of claim rejections.
What we are doing is for our customers, at renewal, when their price goes up and they are suffering on claims, we're advising them to move to narrow networks.
Okay.
Because their price will be controlled, and plus, we will stand guarantee that their claim will be settled. But then they don't have the choice to go to any of the 14,000 hospitals. They have to do exactly what the army structure is. There is a gatekeeper. The gatekeeper will advise you where to go. You don't pick up your face and just go wherever you feel like. That doesn't work. If you want to do that, keep doing that. There is a price that's going up, and there is a claims problem as well.
Is this going to be like Policy Bazaar, a profitable venture in the future that you are currently backing and willing to invest in? Or is this a philanthropic venture or philanthropic idea or philanthropic enterprise? I think that's the question that people are confused about.
I'll explain to you. Yeah. I'll explain to you and I'll also explain my responses. It is going to make profit. If I was to build a hospital and try and compete with the best hospitals the way they are run today, I don't think I will be able to win. But please understand, I'm not a better seller of insurance than an agent. They are probably much better than my employees at selling insurance. I changed the incentive structure. And I'll explain what I did. I said, let us sell those products which are useful to the consumer.
Yeah.
Let us not push those products only which make us the most money. You have to understand, I changed the incentive. I did not become a better seller. I changed the incentive so that I was no longer in competition. That's what I'm doing here. I'm changing the incentive structure altogether, so nobody is competing with me.
Yeah, so you're not up against the Max and the Fortises of the world.
How will they compete with me when I start reducing the incidence rate? They don't want to do it.
All right, time for a short break. Coming up next, Supreme Court stays defamation proceedings against Congress MP Rahul Gandhi for social media posts on the back of the 2020 Galwan clashes. Details in a bit. Welcome back. In international news, Israeli forces continue to bombard Gaza, killing at least 92 Palestinians, including 56 aid seekers yesterday. Now, officials have said that more than 22,000 humanitarian aid trucks are waiting outside the Gaza Strip, and only 36 trucks entered the enclave on Saturday. Hamas has said that it's open to the International Committee of the Red Cross delivering aid to Israeli captives in Gaza. However, for this to happen, Israel must open humanitarian corridors to deliver aid to all people in Gaza. Ukraine's military has said that it used drones to target several sites inside Russia, including refineries, an airfield and an electronic plant. One of the drone attacks had sparked a major fire at an oil depot in Sochi in southern Russia. Ukraine also said that Russian forces launched 76 drones and 7 missiles across its cities. The Supreme Court has stayed defamation proceedings against Congress MP Rahul Gandhi for social media posts on the back of the 2020 Galwan Valley clashes. However, the top court criticized his claim that 2,000 square kilometers of Indian territory were occupied by the Chinese. Ashmit Kumar joins us now with more. Ashmit, take us through what the apex court said.
Well, the Supreme Court granting the relief to Rahul Gandhi by way of staying the defamation proceedings pending against him in the state of UP, but at the same time asking a question of he's being a true Indian. Now, what's the context of it all? Well, let's remember that as a part of the Bharat Jodo Yatra, at the time Rahul Gandhi had raised questions about clashes between Indian and Chinese forces in Galwan. He raised questions about as much as 2,000 square kilometers being under Chinese control. He talked about 20 Indian casualties. He talked about how the Chinese forces were thrashing Indian forces. And these were the very same questions on the back of which defamation proceedings had been launched today. They were very pointed questions. The Supreme Court granting relief, but coming with the rebuke as well, asking questions as to where Rahul Gandhi is making such comments from, where is he getting his information from, that these comments are irresponsible, that he's taken to social media to make these comments. Instead, he should be raising these points, if at all, in the parliament. At one point also remarking that is it truly Indian to be asking these questions, especially in times of conflict, and then going on to say that he could very well have free speech rights, but as a leader of opposition, he also has a certain degree of responsibility. So sharp questions are being asked by the apex court, but nonetheless, on the back of that, agreeing to grant a stay as far as defamation proceedings is concerned. So a legal remedy, a legal relief coming Rahul Gandhi's way, but not without a fair bit of tongue lashing from the top court. Back to you.
Right, thank you, Ashmit, for that. Now, one of India's tallest tribal leaders and a 3-time Chief Minister of Jharkhand, ShibuSoren, has died at the age of 81. He had been under treatment in Delhi for over a month and his condition was critical for the past few days. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, union ministers and politicians across the spectrum paid their tributes. The PM said that ShibuSoren was a grassroots leader who rose through the ranks of public life with unwavering dedication to the people. A leader with over 4 decades of political experience, Soren was elected to the Lok Sabha 8 times. He also served as India's coal minister and was currently serving as a Rajya Sabha MP. Soren was also convicted in the murder case of his former secretary in 2006. He was later acquitted, with the apex court upholding the acquittal in 2018. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Business 360. News and updates continue right here on CNBC TV 18.